over the last maybe year, I don't know, two, the time doesn't really go normal anymore, but over the last while, I've gotten to know Phil Murphy, and I've often been, I've stayed away from politicians in the state. It's not been something I've been particularly interested in, but Phil's been very gracious in trying to get to know our community and understand what he might be able to do to help out should he win the governorship of the state. And so I'm really pleased to welcome tonight, please give me a round of applause, Phil Murphy, candidate for governor.
Good evening.
You good? Yeah, we're good. All right, so let's start with some easy ones. First of all, I want you guys to know, this is not a campaign stop. This is a chance to get to know someone who may be governor or who may not. I mean, best of luck to you.
I appreciate that.
But
I hope it comes down on the May side.
What's been interesting is to see the response from the group when we announced this event, because we haven't had a politician come in before. And so I know that there, as I'm sure you encounter on a daily basis, there are some strong opinions about politics, particularly in the state. So let's start with, why are you running for governor?
I got to say a couple of things first. First of all, it's very good. Aaron and I met over the past couple of years, and we sort of bonded. I'm not the techie that any of you are, but we sort of bonded under a similar view of what New Jersey could be. Secondly, I'm the former U.S. ambassador to Germany, so I'm looking at these flags. I'm feeling right at home right now. I feel like I'm in Munich, so I particularly appreciate the environment. And thirdly, I've looked at your speakers, a sample list of the speakers who have come before. I can't carry their bags in terms of my tech chops. I'm much more in the category of that famous Supreme Court line, I think I know it when I see it. And that's the perspective I come from. I would say New Jersey is singularly the most, I've done a bunch of things in my life, like all of us. I'm almost 60 years old, so I've seen a lot, I've done a lot, like many of you. New Jersey is the singular most undermanaged thing I've ever seen in any walk of my life. So this is not a situation where the state's in crisis, which it is, particularly economically. We're neither growing nor are we fair, and we haven't created the environment that we need to create. It's not that we're like that after having tried everything under the sun. In fact, the opposite is true. There's very little we've tried. If this were a company, I worked in financial services for a bunch of years. If this were a company, we'd be talking about, with the investors here tonight, how to raise the money, to buy it, to put new management in place, to get it to a different place. It's a failure of leadership. And I'm not saying that, I'm conscious of the fact this isn't a political event. That's a comment you could just say objectively. This is a failure of leadership. The people didn't get lousy. Our assets didn't all of a sudden evaporate. Our prospects didn't overnight become extinguished. We've just had weak leadership, particularly as it relates to the economy.
But let's get to why you're running.
That's it. I think there's an enormous opportunity. I could give you a maudlin answer. I grew up with nothing. My dad didn't get out of high school. My mom did. We were Kennedy Democrats growing up in Massachusetts, so we always marveled that people who were born on third base, like the Kennedys, chose to go into service, in public service, and that's something that's been a model. They were our heroes, and yet we didn't have anything in common with them. We didn't have two nickels to rub together. So I'd give you a maudlin answer. The cold-blooded answer is somebody's got to run this state.
Well,
and this is a completely undermanaged opportunity.
People in this room, many of them, follow a calling, right? Like, we go into entrepreneurship not because it's easy. In fact, the graph is often this, and what's called the trough of sorrow, and then the big spike, and then maybe not the big spike, and then the trough of sorrow again. It's not a real easy thing to do. My hunch is that running for office is a similar graph. So you usually do this for a stronger purpose than just it needs fixing.
No, I'm a big, I don't want to be too wearing my heart in my sleeve here, but I'm a big service guy. I've been blessed with some success. I worked hard, but boy, did I get lucky. And I was able to succeed in a couple of different avenues in my life, in my adult life. I want to put me in, Coach. You know, Bobby Kennedy, when his brother was killed, made the decision to run for senator, and it's on YouTube. You should look up this clip. It's a sort of a role model clip for me. And they said, listen, what the hell are you doing here? And in his case, he was moving to New York to run for Senate. So he even had the carpetbagger thing that he had to deal with. And he said, listen, I'm told I can keep my title for the rest of my life. In his case, it was general, having been attorney general. I'm told my dad has enough money to keep paying for a large office. I want to serve. And I don't want to be, I don't want to overanalyze this or over-engineer it. I want to go in and I want to serve, period.
And how do you think you can relate, I know you didn't grow up with much. You've been well educated and had what seems like a pretty impressive career. And so, but I'm curious, like you said, I've been pretty lucky. I'm not somebody who really believes in luck. I think you create your own luck. What have you done in your career to create those opportunities?
Well, education. First of all, education. I'm a public school guy. I believe in that. I believe it's the sort of secret sauce in our state and in our country. So education, clearly. For the most part, staying out of trouble. Working my tail off. Probably being luckier than not in having, and I agree with your luck, you create, luck is the residue of design, and I agree with that. I've been able to find good mentors in my life. Everybody from Julian Bond to, Howard Dean and some business examples as well. I'd say those are ingredients. Staying true to myself. I mean, again, I'm no hero. I make 20 mistakes a day. In fact, my teammates are here today. They'll tell you I've already blown through my today's quota. But I think that's basically it. Working my ass off in many respects, like so many of you all are doing.
So, I think that we share the idea that New Jersey really was one of the original states that was advancing in technology, and we've been. From my opinion, I think we've lost that race. How can we catch up?
We haven't lost it permanently, and that's good news, but we've lost it for the moment. I say in every room I'm in, if we don't get the economy right, we don't get New Jersey right. And when I say getting it right, I mean both growing it and making it fair again. And the fairness agenda has a lot of little steps that, when added together, make us fair again. Everything from equal pay for equal work to making college more affordable to criminal justice reform. There's a long list of stuff. On the growth side, it's reigniting a couple of the engines that I think we used to call our own. One of them is the infrastructure economy, taking complete advantage of our God-given location. And the other is the innovation economy, under the theory that, and I think this is provable, that we were Silicon Valley before there was a Silicon Valley. And you all know that better than I do, but look at Bell Labs and Sarnoff Labs and AT&T and bio and health and life sciences. We had a corner on that, and we've let a lot of that edge go. I think the pieces of the puzzle. Now, why am I optimistic on why it's not a forever lost? Two reasons. Well, three, I guess. One is we used to do it, so that I think you stay within yourself. You look in the mirror if you're a state and say, okay, who am I? Let's make sure we're staying within ourselves. In one respect, we did it before. Secondly, I'd argue that a lot of the pieces, if not all the pieces of the puzzle, are still sitting on the table in front of us, except for the leadership puzzle that understands how you put that together. And the third reason, which is probably the most important for my taste, is not only do you look in the mirror and ask, who are you? But I think you have to compare yourself to the right peer group. We're not Montana or Mississippi, nor will we ever be. I want to look at other states that look like us and ask the question, what are they doing that we can learn from? So I'll pick where I was born, Boston, Massachusetts. It looks like us. It's northeast, similar weather pattern, dense, legacy issues. They're kicking our butt right now in the STEM economy. So that, on the one hand, I bemoan that. On the other hand, I say, you know what? That gives me a lot of optimism. If they can figure out how you put that puzzle together, there's no reason we can't put that Humpty Dumpty back together either.
For a while, Boston led, I think it was Boston, but certainly Massachusetts led in dollars invested in technology companies. It was surpassed then by California, then by New York, and I don't remember where they are in the charts, but it's in that neighborhood of 3 and 4.
Yep.
What can we learn from them, or even some of the other states, of ways we can attract more capital to the state?
These are the right questions. First of all, on venture capital, since over the past 7 years, and I'll pick that for a reason which I will leave unnamed. Over the past 7 years, I think venture capital in volume has gone up about 2x. In New Jersey, it's down 40%. down 40%. And if you look at the big states that get it, it's California, it's New York, it's Massachusetts, and we're way down the list. So what are they doing that we can learn from? Investing heavily in institutions of higher education, particularly in the R&D, the Stevens of the world, the STEM-heavy R&D piece of this. Education generally. You know, we've got a big mismatch between what we're producing and what the opportunities are. Matt Plotkin, who's with me, is our head of policy. Matt, raise your hand. And Dini Ajmani is also here, works with Matt.
Pretty much if they're dressed well, they're with him.
And Stephanie Lagos is here. And so is Dan Bryan. I think that may be true. Matt, you should bottle that. I think this is right that there were something like a mismatch of 23,000 computer science related jobs that are on offer at any moment in time, and we graduate 1,100 kids with computer science degrees. We have a paucity of high schools with computer science AP courses and programs. So there's education, there's higher ed, STEM heavy. It's communities that people want to live in and walk to work, like Hoboken. It's infrastructure investments. So I mentioned reigniting the STEM economy and the infrastructure economy. Those aren't independent thoughts. Investments in higher ed, light rail. Look at NJ Transit the past couple of weeks. We've got 4 teenagers, so please keep us in your prayers. But one of them was stuck under in Penn Station or under the Hudson, I forget which, Friday night, forever and a day, from another derailment. It's taking advantage of our density. You know, so at one level, that gives us enormous responsibility as it relates to environmental stewardship. When you're the densest state in the nation, which we are, you can't get an A-. You got to get, it's pass-fail. On the other hand, in the industry, in the arena in which you all live, that's like ground zero. That's to die for. We're the most diverse state in the United States. Also incredibly consistent with an exploding opportunity in the innovation STEM space. So those are pieces. Public schools, just invest in public schools. We've underfunded what was deemed to be the nation's most innovative school funding formula. We've underfunded it by over $8 billion over the past 7 years. You know, forgetting about the specific money you could put into computer science or tech as part of that.
I'm not, you know, specifically one for policy, but how do you pay for all that?
Listen, New Jersey used to be, this is another reason why I look at Massachusetts. I grew up there. I still have family up there, got some kids in school up there. It is hardly a low-cost place to live or do business. So I grew up in Boston. My wife is a Virginia Beach native. And we fell in love with New Jersey. We still are. We live in Monmouth County, and we chose to raise our 4 kids here. We never came here because we thought it was the low-cost place to live or do business. But we did think, and I think we can be again, a good value for money state. In other words, okay, I know you pay a premium to live here, but boy, you got a basket of stuff back where you say, whoa, it is worth it. I don't like the premium, but I got to tell you something, I'm getting a lot back. I got infrastructure that's first class. NJ Transit, not that long ago, was held out to be the best commuter rail entity in the United States of America. So that's what we were getting, what a lot of us were getting 10 or 20 years ago. So it won't come cheap. No two ways about it. It won't come cheap. The key will not be, we're not going to be Mississippi. We're not going to be the low-cost provider. But I'll die trying to get us in that category of good value for money, creating that economic ecosystem where you say, you know, I pay the premium to be a part of that, but boy, it is worth every penny.
What about non-monetary involvement? Like, is there a government role for that, right? And what I mean is, I got to know somebody who helped rebuild one of the school systems in northern New Jersey, and I had asked them, in particular with Hoboken in mind, it has a spotty school reputation, about what can you do besides money to improve a school system. And he said the number one thing was parental involvement. getting the parents to show up to school, to show that they care, to inspire their kids that this is something that's important. I wonder where do you see the government's role and how they might help facilitate better education outside of just spending more money?
Well, money clearly is part of it. And when I said to somebody who asked me this question last week, I said, listen, if it's a suboptimal situation and you know you're underfunding public education, until you fund it fully, and we know what that looks like, you'll never be able to tell whether it's the money or some other pedagogical or other holistic approach. You've got to freeze one of the big variables. So let's assume we freeze one of the big variables. I co-chaired, gosh, this is probably now 12 years ago, a national task force on public education in the 21st century. Sadly with Roger Wilkins, who died a couple weeks ago, and then Governor Janet Napolitano from Arizona. And one of the big ahas for me was a little bit of what you're, more than a little bit, Aaron. It was time on the clock and the extent to which the school can evolve into something that we now, I think the phrase, the jargon is wraparound services, but the extent to which the school can extend itself so that it becomes the community center. You know, Jeff Canada had something called the Harlem Children's Zone, which was, at the time we did our study, was at the cutting edge. Still is a terrific model, but there are many models now. And it's not a labeled thing. It's not a charter school or a private school or a public school thing. There are just a lot of good schools like that. And if you think of it as the center of the community, and then to your point, you sort of fold in parental involvement, and you extend this thing from instead of an 8:30 to 3 o'clock thing, you extend it, particularly for the kids who are on free and reduced lunch. You're working in a breakfast option. Then you got after school opportunities. Then you got sort of an early evening component, whether that includes meals or not, depending on so then you sort of have a whole, it's not just a school, it's a community central point of contact. And that model tends to be one that works in a lot of communities.
So, to me, a successful tech ecosystem has a bunch of legs to the stool, and I wonder what you think we can do to attract, either extend those legs or build them anew in some cases. So to me, that's a strong funding ecosystem, solid education, which you certainly touched upon here, a strong press environment to bring awareness to the community about some of the things that are going on, where I think we really fall short in New Jersey. A solid startup community to begin with. Yep. And there's a fifth that I can't remember because, why would I? So I wonder what you think we can, in particular, like I wrote an article in Entrepreneur Magazine about my disappointment that Jet.com was bought for $3 billion. I was one of probably a single-digit number of people who were disappointed in a $3 billion sale. But I saw it as an opportunity for a massive e-commerce company to grow. Forget Hoboken, just in the New York region, but it would have been, they're in Hoboken, in case you're unaware, which would have been amazing. And it would have, think about if we had an Amazon, if we had a Google, if we had a Facebook based here, especially in Hoboken, but certainly in the New York area. We do not have that, and I thought that they fell short of their goal trying to achieve that. Because I know that Mark Laurie, the founder, was trying to do that. How can we attract a company like that? Because it's not solely on the idea, it's that if there's a full ecosystem needed to support that kind of business.
Let me just tell you, let me pat you and your colleagues on the back here. This is a very important element in the recipe of how you bake that cake. The fact that you've got the turnout, the fact you get the membership. I think I mentioned to you when we first met, I'd done a similar, smaller than this group discussion in Asbury Park. I'm actually going over to Princeton next week, or later this week rather, to meet with the president and talk about how he sees the evolution potential there. So this is one in the recipe for how you bake that cake. This is on the list. Secondly, you mentioned on your list, Aaron, you mentioned awareness. We got to make sure that people know that New Jersey's open for business, for this type of business. And I don't think we've done a terribly good job of that. And so that's on that list. More communities like this, like Asbury Park, where folks want to live in and do business in and walk to work in. If you read some of the quotes that Jeff Immelt gave after they made the decision, GE made the decision to go to Massachusetts, there's some great quotes about wanting to walk out of his apartment and getting smacked in the face by some 25-year-old on his on his or her way to work, and sort of have that wake up, edge of the seat feel. I think education we've talked about. You need money. You need to make sure that in an environment, policy wise, that this is a open for business environment. One idea we got from a friend of ours. I'm not sure, we haven't kicked the tires on this, but I'll give you one example. In fact, I'll give you two ideas. We've got one is funding education, the other is a VC idea, where you say, listen, New Jersey's going to put a bucket of money aside, and New Jersey's going to be one of the seed investors in companies. And I'm making this up, but you put this is my buddy's idea. We'll buy 20% of your company, and the return on equity will not be that we actually get our money back, but that if the company achieves objectives that are laid out, like ratables, like employment, like you figure out. What's that?
Explain ratables.
Yeah, we're a tax base where you're paying taxes. If you achieve tax revenue objectives, if you achieve employment objectives, the return on equity is that the ownership on behalf of this fund goes down over time. So there's incentive for the entrepreneur to achieve those objectives because they get to own more of the company. So models like that could put us not just in words but in action. Another idea that we've kicked around, which is an education funding idea. So the backdrop here is we want to encourage the STEM economy. Another background point is we lead the nation in exporting high school seniors and college seniors. Another background point is that college has become incredibly unaffordable in New Jersey. I don't know if you saw the University of Maine was advertising in the spring until college decisions were made in a big billboard. They may still be there actually over the turnpike, saying, listen, come on up and visit. Our out-of-state tuition is lower than your in-state tuition. And I got anybody here go to the University of Maine in Orono? I don't want to offend anybody, but that made me mad. So here's an idea: go to college in New Jersey, major in a STEM field, graduate, work in a STEM field for X number of years, and then in say 5, and then in years 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you get X thousands of dollars forgiven per year on your loan as long as you're staying in the state. That keeps the kid in the state. It puts him or her into a STEM field, and it unburdens their college loan debt burden. I like that sort of a 3-for-1 shot. So stuff like that, I think, if you sort of said that's what we're going to be known for, my gut tells me that would give us a nice leg up.
So you may have heard me mention earlier, I do believe that the technology economy is the future of the country. And I wonder, coding in the classrooms is still not happening everywhere. Yep. How do you prioritize, in your educational policy, the importance of that particular?
I always forget the phrase. I wrote it down coming here today. Comp Sci for all, computer science for all, as an initiative, is something that we've talked about. I don't know if you all know, what's Bob Goodman's? Is it Center for Teaching and Learning? Has Bob Goodman come through here? You got to introduce Bob to Aaron. This is a guy you all need to meet. He's the former New Jersey Educator of the Year. Before that, he was the chief executive of Harman Kardon Audio. So how about that for a combination? He now runs the Center for Teaching and Learning, which to the enormous credit of the NJEA, which is the biggest teachers union in the state, they were the seed funders and continue to fund him. He is revolutionizing. He began with physics. He's now in math. He's migrating to chemistry and biology. He's revolutionized both the training of teachers and the pedagogy in those fields, particularly with a bias toward urban school districts. It's a model that ought to be proliferated throughout the state. And I think he would be a great guy to come in, if I may be so bold to suggest someone who I think would be in your wheelhouse. Something like that would be something that would be all over.
Yeah, we'd love to talk to him. One of the things that New York does is they create an ecosystem, a culture that's cool and aspirational. Yeah. And in doing so, they have a chief digital and a chief technical officer. I'm just talking specifically New York City, not New York State. I wonder if those are positions that you would welcome into your administration.
Yeah, we have talked about them and we would welcome them. We want to be cool too. You know, we're next time I'm wearing a different outfit. I'm going to something down the block where I have to have a suit on, so otherwise I'd be in my civvies. But you know, again, we were it. We were it in this space. That gives me enormous amount of optimism that we can be it again. I also think our nose is pressed against the glass, and I'll include myself. You wake up every day, you pick up the front page of the newspaper, you know, 11 straight credit rating downgrades. We lead the nation in home foreclosures. Last year, household income set an all-time record in America. We finished 50 out of 50. Property taxes, pension system. You want to go back to bed. And it's too easy to forget how much we have going for us, and too easy to recognize the enormous opportunity before us. And I think if you put a couple of totems out there that aren't just symbolic, but they're offices of responsibility with real teeth, you start to sort of say, this is not just words. These folks are actually pushing back on that. And that's what we'd like to do.
So it seems like running for office is really an exercise in leadership, which again, from an entrepreneurial point of view, is a relatable ambition. What's something you've learned in the last year or two that you've tried to rally support from a leadership perspective?
Oh my Lord, there's a lot. I mean, I've never run for office before. We don't know each other that well. The closest I've come is I was the national finance chair for the Democratic National Committee when Howard Dean was the chair of the party. I was a big Howard Dean guy, somewhat when Howard ran as president, but really when he was the chair. And that included an enormous investment in technology, by the way, that ultimately was the canary in the coal mine that led to the success that the Obama campaign had in 07 and 08. So I was the finance chair, and I also served as the U.S. ambassador, as I mentioned earlier, in Germany under President Obama for 4 years. A country, by the way, with an enormous engineering culture, yet a very nascent, early stage tech startup culture. Just goes to show you, engineering chops are not necessarily the entire show. You gotta package that, right?
But they get it. Berlin is
now
to somebody in the room here. Berlin was one of the first countries to reach out to us after Propelify last year.
Anybody German here?
Ja.
Anybody? Aus wo?
Ich komme aus München.
Aus München? Wirklich in München oder in der Nähe?
Unterhaching.
Und aus wo? Wie bitte?
Ich komme aus New Jersey, aber ich bin auch Deutsch.
Ah, okay, good.
They're sharing Bitcoin details.
I just
It's
said
okay if
that
you
I'm
don't know
not
what
picking the
Bitcoin
tab
is.
up. I just want you to know that. But so I said that because I've never. Now listen, Berlin is now an exploding tech
They are.
community. But I'll bet you there are as many people in the scene, or about as many in Hoboken as there is in Berlin. With all due respect, there's 3.5 million people there.
Certainly New Jersey.
Yeah, certainly New Jersey. So it's exploding, but it still has a long way to go relative to the size of the economy and relative to its meat and potatoes engineering culture. So I say all that because I've never run for office before. So one thing you learn about, this is not a political gathering, you talk about yourself a lot, which you have to get used to. Because I'm not normally, I'm a little bit, I'd rather my actions speak louder than my words. But when you go into a room, people say, who the heck is this guy?
Yeah.
So you got to talk about yourself. Secondly, I'd say in terms of leadership, it's pretty clear this state, the next governor, whoever it is going to have to spend and be willing to spend a lot of political capital. And if you're not prepared for that reality, if you're not prepared to say, you know what, I'm moving this state. You know, when I plead with people, I say, listen, I'll be the governor that makes decisions at every turn based on what's best for the next generation in this state, not what's best for my next election, period. And measure me not just in those nice words, but in actions. Well, you say that. That comes with a heavy responsibility to move the needle, not just 1 or 2 or 3 degrees, but 20, 30, 40 degrees. And that's going to take political capital. And you're going to have a thick skin and be willing to take the heat that goes along with that, which, by the way, count me in. But that's not something you do lightly.
What's the regret you have from the campaign so far?
We got shot at a bunch, and we returned fire, and I think that was stupid. My view is I want to, this is who I am. I want to have a good debate of the policies and the issues. And I don't want to be the guy that, I don't want to be the guy that gets in the gutter.
What, you know, the current political environment is pretty fascinating, particularly with how, I don't know if you had a chance to see how a red news feed versus a blue news feed looked to somebody in Facebook for the most recent presidential election, but it plays a significant role. And how have you guys managed how you own your message beyond just your base?
I think we're pretty aggressive. Dan Bryan is here tonight, is one of the guys who helps us out in that respect. We're hyper retail, so we want to be in as many big rooms as possible, me personally, and touch as many people as possible. People always say, where can we find you? And my answer is invariably in the crowds. So we do a lot of town halls. We do Facebook town halls. We do telephone town halls. We do combinations of all three. Aggressive on social media. I think we've got a good rhythm going there.
What's something you've been, we won't blame you for not being a tech guy yourself, but respecting the community we certainly appreciate. What's something that's been a surprise to you in getting to know all these social media tools? We're like, oh, this is amazing. This didn't used to exist. You know.
I'll tell you what it is Instagram and.
You like the filters?
I'll tell you, not the filters. I love you. Like yesterday for Easter, turning my likeness into a dozen eggs. No, just the following in particular. My wife also does a lot of this on her own, but the authenticity, how people react to authenticity, is really, regardless of the channel. So that's Instagram, but it's not just that. It's just as a general matter. If something is canned, people can sniff it out, and we don't want to be that guy. So we are trying to be. This is who we are. You may not like it, but this is us. And so the more authenticity, and it makes sense to me, but I haven't lived it, so I haven't done it as a principle. I've been around, I've got close to President Obama. I've seen what he's done. I know who he is. I know that he's the real deal. I've seen it in its earlier stages. I've seen it with others. But until you're actually doing it yourself, you don't have an appreciation. The more raw it is, the more authentic it is, the more real it is. Even if it's imperfect, the more of a gravitational pull it has.
I think for those of you guys who follow Gary Vaynerchuk, I mean that's what he's all about, being authentic. In his case, very value driven. I'm going to open up for a few questions. Phil's on a tight clock, so we're going to go soon. But before I do, the thing that struck me the first time that we met at a small dinner, you were talking about how the state's having a tough time, from coast to coast or north to south, and I felt very out of touch with what's actually going on in the rest of the state outside of northern New Jersey. So I wonder, one, maybe inform everybody about what the state really looks like all around, and two, what might we do as an empowered technology and entrepreneurial community to affect some of those things?
Let me just go back to one thing you said earlier. You want your own Facebook and Google. There should be no reason. There is no reason. You know what? There's no reason, and it's coming. With the right leadership, you keep this up. You get the right policies at the state level. We're going to get our fair share. I'm highly convinced of that. Hudson, who's over there? Dee Dee, could I borrow a glass of water from you? I promise I'll give it back. Hudson County's a little bit of a bubble. It's booming. And the way it booms depends on the community in some cases. So Hoboken is booming in a way different than Jersey City. And Weehawken is booming in a way. Kearney is a place that's about to explode. The whole Kearney Point development, I spent a few hours at a couple weeks ago, in its own way. But as a general matter, there are only 13 communities, I believe, in Hudson County, which makes it among the populous states, the one with the fewest amount of communities. So they're large population numbers, Jersey City being the biggest, and lots of lots of people. Proximity to New York, proximity to water. This is a different reality than most other places in the state. Thanks, man. Okay, thank you so much. That's not beer, is it? God, I would love that. I said to this woman over there, I'd love to have some of her beer next time. The reality in the rest of the state is largely different. As I mentioned, the economy not growing and unfair. Big we lead the nation in home foreclosures. Atlantic County, which is where Atlantic City is located, #1 county of foreclosed homes in the United States of America. So that's a big statement. So the dislocation in the gaming business in Atlantic City has been real carnage. And that's job loss, home values. The North continues to be, it's a very diverse state. So if you're up in Bergen County, forget about Hudson for a minute. If you're up in Bergen County, it looks dramatically differently. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been in both Cape May and Salem counties. Very different states down there, very different dynamic. You know, nuclear power exists down there with a lot of jobs. Agro-tourism is a big thing. Agricultural economy is a general matter. So very diverse state. And by the way, that part of the state's suffering enormously. So for the most part, when you walk into a room in this state, whether it's up north or whether it's south and rural, you're talking about the economy. And you're not talking about it because it's working terribly well. You're talking about it because it's not working. And so that's sort of the getting the economy on its feet, getting it growing again, getting it fair again is job #1.
And then the second part of the question was, what could we do here to potentially help?
I think the extent to which, listen, California went from, in 2011, it went from a $23 billion deficit to a $7 or $8 billion surplus in 2016. So that swing is not quite as big, but it's almost as big as our entire state budget. They did that for a lot of reasons. Jerry Brown's a heck of a governor at the end of the day. And it's another high-cost, highly regulated state. So it also proves the point. It looks very different than Massachusetts or New Jersey, but it proves the point that if it's working and it really works for all your citizens, all, not just for some, people will be prepared to pay for that. And so if you look at, I used to say there are a lot of things in California that we don't, that aren't common to us. And some things we do want of theirs and some things we don't want. On the do want list, a lot of tax revenues related to monetization events of technology companies. So the great thing would be, I hear you on jet.com, but the extent to which you all are successful and you generate the tax revenue and the jobs, that can be put to great use, not just here in the communities in which the success occurs, but throughout the state. That can bankroll the next generation, if not more, of our state's future.
A couple questions from the crowd. Yes.
Hi, my name is Lorette, and just by background, I was born and raised in New Jersey public school, lived in Manhattan for 30 years, and I've been back in New Jersey for a year and a half. In 2010, I worked with SUNY in New York and New York City Economic Development to really help with the New York City tech ecosystem, because it was really beginning there. So moving back to New Jersey, I thought I really need to get a sense of this tech ecosystem, and I've met with Aaron and I've attended a lot of different tech meetups. I've also gone to the Economic Development Corporation or division or whatever it is of the state of New Jersey. It is non-existent. There is nothing that I can find. You know, I hear some guy stand up at your tech meetup, says economic development. There is nothing. The meetups, I've been to almost every meetup at once in New Jersey. They are doing their very best to convene and connect within their region.
Yep.
Right? And so you go to Asbury and it's very marketing driven. You go up to Bell Labs and it's very telephony, makes sense. You go out to Princeton, it has a different feeling. You go to Montclair, you come to the 6th borough, and this is all Manhattan. I know the revenues here. I believe tech is an economic imperative to the state of New Jersey. I believe the Economic Development Division of the government could play an amazing role of bringing together. I mean, Aaron can do what he does in Hoboken, they can do what they do in Asbury. There is nothing at the state level that begins to knit it together so that people within the state can convene at a higher level and can begin to find out. It is up to the individual, go to the meetups, network. It's a lot of work.
Just in the sake of time, I got to cut you off. But the question is,
I understand your vision
Yep.
for what the government can do in the state of New Jersey to begin to knit together the tech ecosystem to really help flourish
Yep.
this economic imperative that's there.
So I will leave out all the things I said earlier about investing in education and infrastructure and things like that,
Yeah.
which we need to do, given. We should talk to, is Matt here still? Or Stephanie, you guys should, can you, Matt and Stephanie, will you raise your hands? Can you find them or they find you afterwards? It's on the list of what I said earlier. I'm going to give you a short answer in the interest of time. It's on the list of, if we had done everything under the sun and we were stuck in the mud, I wouldn't have the courage to be sitting here. The fact of the matter is, this is an example. We can't find it either. There's nothing going on. So it's not like we tried everything and we're failing. The upside is enormous. I almost feel our biggest challenge is we're boundaryless. There's so little that we've done. So I want to make sure that we're actually, the 3 first steps we take, I want to make sure have the biggest impact possible, which is why we spend a lot of time, which is another reason I'd love to talk to you. We rip off ideas that other states have done. That's basically what we do. We rip off a little from our own past. We mostly go around and say, where can we find a model that we think would work in New Jersey and then apply it?
Well, Mayor Bloomberg.
we got to move on.
Yeah.
But I appreciate
But
that.
no, I love it.
Over here, let's take one from the other side, because he's got to go in 1 minute. It's got to be quick.
Hey, Brendan Kaplan, I work for the New Brunswick Office of Innovation. Something that we've been really able to do is leverage technology to improve quality of life for municipalities in the city. And I'm wondering what the state can do to subsidize or sort of help that innovation economy. I know New York State is experimenting with doing tax give backs for open source software development. And so much of what we've done, chatbots recently featured in the New York Times, for example, is open people contributing out of the goodness of their heart because they want something to happen. How can the state, and I know you're running for governor, not legislator, but how can we sort of support that?
Great thought. We've thought a little bit about it. I don't have a good glib answer. One of the promises I made to myself running for office is I'm not going to BS anybody. Could you also make sure we talk to you? I'd love to get I'd like to get the idea from you, frankly. Somebody, sir.
There's the last question.
Any learnings from our previous governors? There was a picture in the paper the other day of Governor Byrne and King. What are the learnings from them? Have they given you any concrete, tangible input that could be applied in the first 3, 6, 9 months?
I was on the phone with Governor Kane today, who's an old-time mentor and friend. Governor Byrne, I saw a couple of weeks ago. I was on the phone with Governor Cody 30 minutes before I walked in here, so I talked to these folks a lot. I would say are there any nuggets? I don't want to waste your time with sort of because the conversations in the past today were more at the tactical level. Can I get your reaction to this particular act or statement? I'm going to put a bow around lots of advice I've gotten from folks who have. Listen, one thing I say about Governor Kane all the time, I'm a Democrat, he's a Republican. He was governor in the 80s. We were AAA bond rated, and we were progressive, and we were civil, and he was the education governor, and we tried big projects. The Transportation Trust Fund got started then. So I say to myself, this transcends politics. This is about leadership, much more than it is about Party X or Party Y. I think one observation would be, if we're fortunate enough to get there, we have to hit the ground running. We have to have a very impactful 3 to 6 months. And that's probably advice I've gotten from a lot of people, not just restricted to them. Do I do an ask and an offer?
You should.
Okay. The ask is, check us out, murphy4nj.com. And if you like what you see, we'd love your help. The offer is a better New Jersey. You have my word, including a better New Jersey that supports and knits together a lot of what is clearly raw opportunity that if we get it right, we can really own a big space here. And I think it's an existential element. And you didn't use that word, but you could have. It's an existential element to our future, both economic, societally, education, otherwise.
We'll give you 10 seconds to say what do you got. You have 10 seconds.
6 to go. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
It's a very complicated equation. You bring in foreclosures, property taxes, and
Yep.
education. And it's less of a question, more of a comment.
Yep.
I'd like to understand, it's not only complicated, it's near impossible. There'll be haves and have-nots, especially when you look at what Christie is trying to do with the Department of Education currently.
Yep.
You're way beyond 10 seconds.
It's
I'm
not
cutting you
easy.
off.
So the point is that this is we're in a ginormous crisis. It's not easy. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think we could crack the back of it, though. It won't be overnight. Theo Epstein, when he took over the Chicago Cubs, kept getting stopped on the streets. My 87-year-old grandmother, they were losing 100 games a year. My 87-year-old grandmother has never seen them win the World Series. My 84-year-old father, what should I tell them? And Epstein's answer has an enormous amount of relevance for New Jersey right now. He would say, tell them to keep taking their vitamins because it's going to take a few years.
Thanks, man. Thank you very much. I want you guys to know that this came up a bunch when we announced this. This is, again, it's not a campaign event, but I think it's a really critical thing that we have a line of communication should Phil win. And so I can tell you, no matter whether you liked what he said or not, he's very interested in hearing what we have to say. So if people want to follow up with you, what's the best? Will you answer?
Yeah, 100%. Murphy4nj.com. We will answer. So make sure, please do that.